Steve was an awesome police officer, one of the best patrol officers I've ever worked with. The empathy and sympathy and what he did for the people that he encountered on the streets of South Portland is amazing. Steve had some rough times. He was shot in the line of duty. This was many years ago. And honestly, as a patrol officer then when it happened, and knowing what I know now as a deputy chief, I wish more had been done for Steve. I believe that if his shooting occurred tomorrow, it would have been an entirely different story.
Me and Steve got closer. He was involved in a shooting on duty. And I think me and Steve got closer after my accident. I got in a very bad car accident on duty. I got hit by a distracted driver. I was out for about 7 months. Didn't know if I was going to come back or not. So that was a really dark period in my life. And Steve always would reach out to me because it's almost like we kind of had that bond. We both been through traumatic experiences on duty. So I think that kind of brought us closer together. But I mean, he was great when I was out of work. He'd call up regularly. He came over to my house a few times, see how I was doing, because I think he knew what I was going through, and I kind of knew what he was going through as well. So as far as warning signs, I mean, he always seemed like the same Steve to me. I didn't see anything that stuck out. I remember the last day he worked, it was I believe it was a Friday, Thursday or Friday. I think I was the last one to see him leave the locker room, and I just said, catch you later. And he walked out and I walked out, and yeah, that was the last time he came to work, obviously. So
yeah, I remember that day walking out of the locker room. A bunch of us just happened to leave at once, and it's kind of rare because sometimes someone will be held over for paperwork or evidence turn in, or someone shooting the breeze in the classroom. But a group of us just kind of walked out together and said our goodbyes, and never would have thought twice about it, that he had anything hanging over him that heavily. And the next morning, sitting in briefing, it's 7:04. Where's Steve? Like he was always the first one seated. He had the same seat every single day for years. And it's like, well, where is he? Maybe his alarm clock didn't work. Maybe he lost power. Maybe he's in a ditch. I shoot him a text at 7:04. He goes unanswered, and then as the minutes ticked by and a couple hours ticked by, and a well-being check happened at his home. Kind of struck home, like, wow, that you never know when that last moment is that you see somebody. Definitely make the most of it, and it was just like any other day. Things were going well. You'd think things were going well. You think you know a guy. We get trained in CIT training, and we spend hours and hours and days on recognizing the signs of somebody who is at the end of their rope, somebody stressed out, somebody maybe who's thinking about or making a plan to kill themselves or harm themselves. So when it hits that close, it's like, man, how did I miss? What did I miss? All the time that we spent together, whether in the locker room or briefing or car spooning or debriefing a call, how did I miss any clues? And so that, in my mind, was a disappointment for myself, knowing that this guy that I spent a lot of time with for the last couple of years, I worked with him for about 2.5 years at that point. And I still walking through the grocery store the other day, why Steve, and what did I miss?
It was my first week on the job. He pulled me aside, pulled me in the reports room, and told me that he needed to show me something. And I was like, well, I don't know what's going on. And he pulls up a recording, and that was of his shooting that happened, a while back. And he was like, I've never really showed this to anyone, but I just want to let you know that this is why I'm grumpy. This is who I am and who it's formed me to be. He's like, Taylor, you're a bubbly person. I don't want this to ever happen to you. So that has always resonated with me till now. And when I woke up on the 9th and from my lieutenant calling me, and he told me that Steve killed himself. I wasn't surprised, but also I was like, okay. No emotions, I was just in shock. I had a horrible year last year too with family deaths, and so it's just getting over all of that and knowing how to feel. But I had to work later that day, and I remember just sitting in my car on the way to work and just like bawling my eyes out. And I think walking into the PD doors where everyone else had the same exact look on their face was like the Thin Blue Line family coming together of what do we do now? How can we support each other? I don't think I've seen so many hugs going around the PD that day. But I think in this sense of Steve killing himself and already having a set mind, he helped our PD realize how important our lives are, how much we impact each other, and how we need to stay together as sisters and brothers in this line of work, and really advocating for getting help when you need it and the resources that we do have. And if you don't have resources at the PD, like, you can reach out to anyone else. And
it hit me really hard. He helped me a lot when I was pregnant and my husband was away for military for an extended amount of time, and it was just like, he was the first one to come over and pick up all the leaves in my yard, the first one to help after a snowstorm or text me to make sure that I was okay. So when I found out that he passed away, it hit home.
He and I worked very, very well together. We were able to read what the other person was thinking and act off that. We could handle calls with very little verbal communication between the two of us. And so when Steve committed suicide, I had to, part of my processing of that was, how did I not know that that was right there in front of me, that was about to happen? So Steve wasn't very, very private, kept a lot of things to himself, regardless of how close he was with somebody. But it was very difficult to work through that. I didn't see it coming, and wasn't able to at least try and do something to stop it from happening.
People are a lot more welcoming, open to mental health concerns, buddy checks, going to sit by the fire pit or get a drink, or on a late shift we used to go get breakfast sometimes and just talk about stuff, talk about a call, or just talk about something completely different and just like mentally just wipe the slate. But in terms of administration, I believe that before, I think there was a perception among guys on the street that, if there's a mental health concern, it's like, oh, it's going to end my career, they're going to take my gun, take my badge, lock me away, whatever. But I truly believe at every level that support has really come around, and people are encouraged to discuss and also welcome. When you go forward with concern, it is welcomed by everybody.
I just wish that, maybe he'd have at least gone for some more help, because there was outlets there for him. But Steve was a proud individual, a loner at times, and there were resources out there, but it just comes down to if you're willing to seek that help. But yeah, I didn't really see anything that stuck out.
Honestly, it surprised me when he committed suicide. Steve, I think, struggled. I do know that there were numerous times help was offered. He, I believe, chose not to accept it for whatever his reasons. If he felt that because by accepting it, he would have been blackballed, he would have had that stigma on him, that he would have been forced out of the profession, because for everything he griped about inside the station, he loved this job.
We go to jobs and we are told, you know, if you're dealing with a suicidal person, like, you know, come out and just ask them, like, hey, are you having suicidal thoughts? Do you feel like killing yourself? Do you have a means of doing it? Well, we have no problems asking other people, so why can't we ask those that we work with? And it's just like this terrible stigma that if you feel this way, that there's something wrong with you, or you're not good enough to do the job, or I'm gonna lose my job, and that's not true. If anything, it's gonna make you a better officer, being able to seek out the help that you need, because chances are you're going to turn around on the street and you're going to deal with somebody that's probably having those same thoughts that you once did, and you're just going to be able to connect with them on such a different level that might be the difference of them deciding that they want to take their life or that they want to live.
You can't be afraid to have those uncomfortable, awkward conversations with somebody, more than just to check in, but like maybe dig a little bit. Like, don't wait for it to come out. Like, dig a little if you have to. And they might blow you off 99 times, but that one time they'll be like, you know what? I really appreciate you asking that question or whatever. So, but you got to remember that everybody is dealing with it and grieving. The entire agency, you know, admin assistants who are just crumbling because, you know, they knew Steve in their own way when he'd come visit at the desk and stuff. They also totally blown away. And then at our big debriefing, looking around the room at the younger officers who, you know, hadn't been through that before, you know, hadn't worked in a lot of places, haven't had a lot of different coworkers with different issues yet. And to see them really busted up, going around the room talking about it, you know, it's just something you got to think about. You know, it affects a lot. It affects everybody. It affects everybody in the room in some way. So it's really, if it can be avoided, if it can be talked about, if it can be anything, you know, no phone call is too late. You know, no talk in the back parking lot is too long. You got to just talk about stuff.
I'm not ashamed of Steve. I'm not ashamed of what he did, because he was injured and he was hurting, and he felt he did what he needed to do. I wish I had done more. I wish this department has done more. But that's you're always going to think that after something like this, regardless, even if you did everything you could. I do not want to see it happen again, and I don't want to see. I hope us doing this video helps other agencies just to start the conversation, because you don't want to go through it again. We're still wounded, and we're still experiencing the trauma of losing him, and we're still healing, and I don't know if we'll ever heal. Our new chief lost an officer to suicide 10 years ago at his old department, and he thinks about him every day still. And again, law enforcement has changed for the better, but we got to continue that forward movement.